our mothers.
Oh.
Thank you. And the world needs women to understand and live our creative, purifying, nurturing power, as well as our destructive power. And many of these powers are really evident when we prepare for gestate a child and give birth and nurture a child. So I'm going to talk quite a bit about motherhood, and sometimes I'll talk very specifically about the actual experience of having children, and then other times I will talk about taking that experience or the potential of that experience outward beyond actual child rearing. I'm going to say a little bit about why I was inspired to write this book. I heard a talk from a Sufi teacher who's interviewed for the book. His name's Llewellyn Von Lee, and he was talking about, in a very matter-of-fact way, he was speaking about a substance in women's energy systems that's active when women give birth, or actually when they receive a soul into the womb and integrate that soul into a material form and give birth to a child. He was talking about this substance in women's chakras that and in his tradition it's called Virya Shakti, that has a role in giving birth, but it also has a role in restoring the spiritual nature and light of the planet Earth. And I was moved by the very practical and grounded possibility that there are esoteric differences between men and women. And I was inspired by the thought of finding more teachers who could see, work with, recognize, and discuss some of these very specific esoteric realities that are within women. I haven't even begun to approach. We're coming out of centuries of a focus on transcendent spiritual systems. And our culture, our Western culture is particularly focused on it channels its energy towards more transcendent awareness. So in terms of religious traditions, we hear a lot about Father in Heaven, Grandfather Sky, Grandmother Earth. We're oriented towards a spiritual experience beyond the body, and we celebrate spiritual experiences that are transcendent of the body. Male-dominated religious systems have created, for the most part, spiritual paths that take people's attention away from the body or embodiment. That's our great monastic traditions. Women really have not been as involved in the monastic traditions because we had children largely, and we are tied to a home and to people. And renouncing the world and renouncing the needs of the bodies is not something we've actually had the practical capacity to follow, but it's also not something that is largely in sync with our natural spiritual awareness, which is fully embodied. So as we sort of approach a topic of embodied spirituality, as we try to live this awareness and honoring of what's in the body and discover the spiritual energies within the body, women are going to have to deal with a tremendous amount of shame and fear and wounding, because we have been so physically violated and so wounded. And the things that we hold dear to us generally have been degraded, like children, like the earth, nature. So there's a tremendous need for women to live their power, and then there are these tremendous roadblocks to doing so, because our power is intricately tied with the earth and the power of the earth. And so to enter more into an honest and open and honoring relationship with our own power actually requires dealing with our feelings and experiences of being so connected to the earth and all the wounding that has come with that. One of the great Sufi saints, Baisab, once said, when women get old, if women get old, all creation would disintegrate. And there is a sense that women are so connected to the earth that if women were to die off, the earth itself would lose its center. And to some degree, I really believe this is what's happening, not because women are getting old, but because we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten the uniqueness of our spiritual power and how to use it in service to the whole of life. And so there's this terrible forgetting and dissociation of women from their own power and their own source of power. And it's understandable because of the history of civilization, but it's something that needs to be changed in order to step into and create a world that is healed, where nature is not suffering so much, where we don't have quite so much violence against nature, against the body, against women, against children. So I grew up in a fairly religious but not particularly spiritual home. We had a strong sense of a religious identity and morals, but no true connection with God or a higher power. When I had my first child, however, I was overwhelmed by the bond I felt with my daughter during breastfeeding. It wasn't just the physical connection. Giving life and nourishment to her and watching her grow over the weeks and months was miraculous. But what threw me was the emotional response. It was joy, wonder, devotion, and hope rolled into a connection shared only by the two of us. So Dr. Sun says this. He says, breastfeeding naturally activates a chakra, an energy point near a woman's breast, which allows energy to flow with the breast milk to the child. This helps the child grow just as much as the milk itself. The chakra works with the heart. It sustains the child, and it also protects the child. So what's important, again, to go back to is that, one, there is something fundamentally spiritual happening in a woman's body. And the way women's spirituality tends to work is it is fully embodied, like I said before. There's sort of a requirement that the body is used. And the woman experiences something of this, wholeness. And wholeness is also a mark of a woman's spiritual experience, where love and matter and form, the world of the formless and the world of the form are coming together in an experience. And there isn't this separating out of one and the other that sometimes you hear as a familiar cry in men's spiritual literature, a turning away from form. But here, love is coming through the body, and without the body, it wouldn't be coming through in this way. And so the second point that I made earlier is that this experience, which can be so profound for women, and I don't know, we have somebody who's breastfeeding here in the back, but when you talk to women who breastfeed, it's so tender and often very, not the breastfeeding itself, which can be like painful, like a vacuum cleaner, I guess, but the experience can be so profoundly intimate. And then when the child is weaned, when you have to give up that experience, it can be a tremendous grief that goes with it. Because women have been engaged in this way with this love that they think they're losing when the child grows away. But the important thing to remember is that the woman's body doesn't change. The chakra is still there. And the point is then to expand one's experience of being a mother and activate, through a basic honoring of one's own body and potential, spiritual power, activate that chakra at other times in one's life. And this is, I want to read a quote from a woman who had weaned her children, but was starting to get a glimpse of this other possibility. My experience of breastfeeding showed me something so important. It was like an imprint about how much love and connection there can be when you don't put yourself first, when you're not the center of the world. I never had a picture of myself as a sacrificing person, and it's not really accurate to call it that. It's more that you are just in it. So she was able to take this profoundly intimate and meaningful experience and expand it to see that there can be something of it remaining at another time in life, as long as she's not the center of her world, and as long as she's willing to relate with love to life around her. And that's basically all that's really required of women in terms of activating that chakra again, to put love into life for the whole community. It's not like you need spiritual practices, you don't need spiritual training. There just needs to be this shift of awareness that love flows and can flow through the body with our full engagement. If we're not the center of the world, we're caring about other beings and the planet or other people. And there are images of this. There's a beautiful statue, a Phoenician statue of the goddess Astarte, who has, it's an alabaster statue, and she has breasts, and her nipples are basically voids, and she's holding a bowl. And it's this image of this potential of the breast milk coming out and serving not a baby, but a greater community. And so again, it's that there's a potential in women's bodies that we're not going to uncover or use if, one, we don't honor our bodies as spiritual and are